Hi, this is Donna. Welcome to DD Paper Crafts, and in today's video we're going to making this gift box idea which I've turned into a keepsake card and a keepsake gift box. I've decorated mine for a new baby and I thought it would make a great keepsake box after the gift has been used, but it's very adaptable and can be used for lots of occasion. If you do have the 3D display and standard dies by Made to Surprise, you can adapt those for this project. You won't need any specialty dies to make this, but you will need the ability to make a circle, as you can see from the shape. So without further ado, let's get started. For the main box element, I'm starting with a circle which is 6 1/8 in diameter, and I have used a circle die for this, but you can use a circle cutter, cut round a side plate, whatever you have. I've cut one circle out of scrap paper and then I've cut two out of my base cardstock, and I would suggest you watch this portion first because there may be steps that you think you don't need to do, etc. So you might not need to go through the same number of processes that I'm going to go through. I'm going to take my template circle and fold it in half and burnish it thoroughly. So I've got my semicircle. Take one of my base pieces, place it in my scoreboard and line the template circle up over my base cardstock, and you want to make sure that they are aligned all the way around. Take my pencil and lightly draw along the edge of the template circle, splitting my semicircle in half. Rotate the circle and lay the pencil line in horizontally across the scoreboard, and use your ruler if you need to make sure that it is horizontal. And I'm going to score at 2 inches and 5.5 inches. So this is our base piece. This is our cut line, and this is the indication of where our stand is going to sit. Take your template piece and along the halfway point score line, measure up 3/4 of an inch from the outer edge and make a pencil line. Place your template in the scoreboard, making sure that your 3/4 inch pencil line is on the left, and score at 1.5 inches. Ignore the top score line, so this is our shape for our stand. Take your template and line the centre score line up on the template with the centre pencil line on the base piece, and move the template up until the edge of the circle is level with the 3/4 inch score line. Take your pencil and draw around the outer edge. So we've got a segment cut away. Do that on both pieces. Cut away the segment. So we've got our segment with a tiny piece cut out. You can obviously use the piece that you've cut the segment out as your template for your second base element. Using my trimmer, I'm going to line the score line, the 2-inch score line up with the cutting track, cut off the top piece, which is effectively going to be the lid. Do the same on the other piece, and these 4 pieces make up the front and back panels of our box. Now I would say at this point you don't need to make the segment into the base panel. You can attach the top and the base together as a circle, and I'm going to show you an example here. The reason why I've changed the shape of this up is because I do want this to be able to be used as a keepsake box after the gift has been used, and I felt that by removing the segment from the bottom of the circle box, it just would give the box more rigidity if it continued to have some weight put in it. You can see here this piece is secured and is great if it's just sitting on a shelf somewhere, but if the box is going to start having a little bit more weight added, I just prefer the security of the top of the box sitting more securely on the base of the box. And the way I got that was by cutting the segment out. We're going to start by putting the base panel together, and I now want to calculate the length of the band that's going to go around and join the front and back panels together. I've got a strip of cardstock and I'm just going to add a slight curve, and I'm going to lay it around the outer edge of my piece. If you're going to make a box a different size, this is one way you could calculate the card that you'll need to go around the outside edge. I'm just going to make a pencil mark, and I can always make this slightly too long and then trim it down. I want this piece to fold inwards because it's going to come to there and then curve in. So I'm going to mark at the other end. My first side is that long, which is A. The middle section is going to be B. You'd think that A and what's going to be C are the same length. They're not. It's about 1/4 of an inch too short. So I'm going to start with a new piece of card, mark the end, and that's going to be C. I'm going to double check them on the second base piece, and they all match. So when I add my pieces together, I need to make sure that A sits on top of A, C sits on top of C, etc. So A is between 4 3/8 and 4 1/2, so 4 5/16. And B is 2 7/8. And for side C, it's 4 5/8, plus 1 1/2 for B. So I'm going to cut a strip which is 7 1/8 of an inch for C and B. So I'm not going to get that out of one piece of cardstock, and because this piece is underneath and won't be seen, I'm going to cut 2 pieces of cardstock, and then I'll have an overlap in this section here. My band is 2 inches wide, so I'm going to cut my cardstock to 3 inches, which will give me a 1/2 inch glue tab either side. I'm going to have one piece for A and part of B, which is 6 1/2 inches, and then one piece which is for C and B, which is again going to be 3 inches wide by 7 1/8. On each piece along the 3 inch side, score at 1/2 inch and 2 1/2 inches. And on the piece which is for A and B, I'll put one score line in only, which is the score line for the end of A. And I'm going to do that at 4 5/16. So my score line needs to be where this notch is, which I'm going to mark with my school tool, and then move the card along until the mark I've just made is level with a track, and then I'm going to score. So that's A and B, and then for piece C and B, again score at 1/2 and 2 1/2, and along the long side I'm going to score at 4 5/8. I'm just going to put a slight curve into those and burnish the short score line, and I'm just going to double check A and C to make sure they are going to fit. Fold and burnish the long score lines, and use your score tool or a ruler and burnish upwards the longer section, so A and C. Flip the card over and then do the same with the shorter section, which is B, and that's going to help give us the shape that we need. And then cut your teeth all the way along the 1/2 inch tab on both sides on both pieces. Once you've cut your teeth, use your chosen glue, and I'm going to stick down side A to start with, and just make sure you have got side A and piece A. So I'm going to stick that down. These edges on my decorated piece won't be seen, but I still want to take my time to make sure that it looks as neat as possible. Once that's lined up, I'm just going to go in with my score tool and gently burnish down the teeth. And I've managed to get a nice neat join there. So piece B will come in like so, and you can see that it's much longer than it needs to be. So I'm going to stick A and C down first and then trim B. So I'm going to follow the same process and add piece C. And now I've got A and C stuck in, I'm going to fold under one of the sides of piece B, and then I'm going to trim off some of the excess on the other side, piece B. And I'm also going to trim off some of the teeth from the smaller piece. So I'm going to stick the longer piece into place first and get the shape. And I'm pushing in with my forefinger and pushing the tabs in with the hand underneath, and just using my thumb on the top to get that into the shape. Then I'm going to tuck in the last teeth on the shorter piece and glue that shorter piece over the top. And then I can just go in and gently push the teeth down. So that's one side done. And now I'm going to take the second piece, make sure I've got that the right way up with A sitting over A and C sitting over C. I'm going to add my glue to the teeth and then adhere the top panel on top. So I'm using my fingers inside to push the teeth up, pushing it into place on the top panel. I'm just going to add some more glue onto the top section and then continue working my way around. And then I'm just going to go in and use my score tool and press the tabs down on the inside. So that's the first part of the box base complete. I'm now going to follow exactly the same process to calculate the piece of cardstock that we're going to use to create the top edge for the lid. I've got another piece of scrap paper which I'm just going to line up with the edge, wrap that around the curve of the lid piece, and I'd rather have this slightly too long and then trim it. The strip I need is going to be 7 5/8 long by 3 inches, which I'll score at 1/2 and 2 1/2. And we're going to now add this band to the lid sections exactly as we did for the side panels of the base. So fold and burnish, add a slight curve, and then cut your teeth. Fold your teeth in, and then as we did with the base panel, we're going to add the top edge of the lid onto the side panels for the lid. It is slightly too long. I'm going to start at the same end for the other side. Let's just trim that little bit off. I'm going to make sure I start adhering the other side panel at the beginning so that my overhang is all on one side. I'm going to go in with my burnish tool and just press those teeth down. and I'm going to trim off this excess once that's dry. I'm going to have my lid hinged, although you could have a totally detachable lid if you wanted. But to help the lid sit in properly, I'm going to add 2 strips which are just going to sit in the top to help the lid secure down. I've cut 2 pieces of cardstock which are 5 3/4 by 3/4, and along each corner on the top edge I've marked along 1/4 of an inch and down 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just going to use those pencil marks to cut across diagonally. This is just going to cut off the top corners and help the lid sit down without catching. I'm going to use my construction glue and add it to the lower 1/2 inch and just sit those inside the longer side panels. I've trimmed off my excess and the lid is going to sit on top like so. For the hinge, I'm going to have a piece of cardstock which is 1 7/8 by 1 inch, and I'm going to score along the 1 inch at 1/2 inch. Fold and burnish, and you do want to fold and burnish this in both directions. That's going to sit in there. I'll use my construction glue. I'm going to sit that in and just make sure that the score line is sitting above the top edge of the box and the hinge can move freely. And then I'm going to add my glue to the top portion of the hinge, line up the base edge of the box, butt it right up to the score line and pinch the hinge into place. And then just make sure that the lid does sit down and you've got a nice crisp join where the lid meets the base. Now obviously this has got no rigidity at the moment, so it is very floppy. All of this section won't be seen with the way I'm going to decorate because I'm going to have a larger circle on the front. I'm going to set that aside to dry properly, and we're now going to work on the base element which this is going to secure to. Go back to your template from the beginning, and this section here is the shape and size for the stand. I'm going to remove it from the circle with the trimmer, and I'm going to cut this twice out of my chosen cardstock, and that's going to be glued onto there to secure the base. I'm going to line up the edges on my cardstock. You could, if you prefer, use your circle die that you started with, sit it over your paper template, and then run that through your die cutting machine. If you just feel you'll get a neater edge doing it that way, rather than cutting a curved edge with your scissors, that's fine. And in fact, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine, and that's given me my 2 stand pieces. I've calculated the length for this piece exactly the same with my strip of card, and therefore I've got a piece of cardstock which is 7 by 3, which I'm going to score at 1/2 and 2 1/2. And then for the base, I've got a piece which is 6 1/2 by 3. Along the 6 1/2, score at 1/2 and 6, and along the 3, score at 1/2 and 2 1/2. Fold and burnish the score lines on both pieces, and we'll start by taking the 7-inch piece, adding a curve, cut our teeth, and then take the base of the stand and start by cutting away the corners. I've already added my 2 side panels onto my top zigzag strip, and I'm now ready to put my base in. And to prepare the base, I've cut away the 4 corners and cut very sharp angles at the ends of each glue strips. Although I've put mine together, I think now, with the benefit of hindsight, what would be easier would be to add your serrated edge to one side only, then glue your base around the 3 edges, and then add your last part on to the serrated teeth and the last glue tab of the base tab. With the benefit of hindsight, I would construct this in a different order. I've realised too late. If I could peel the teeth back away and re-stick it, I would, but am where I am. So I'm just going to have to try and get the 4 tabs glued in. So this is essentially how the box is going to sit. Once my base is dry and I've added my decorative paper, I'll use my construction glue to add the base and the stand together. And I'm going to use additional circles which are going to sit entirely over the front, will come down and cover parts of the stand, and will sit over the lid, etc., but only be glued onto the base and the stand. So I'm going to go ahead with that. I'm now about to add my finishing touches, but before I do that, I thought I would add the stage that I'm at. I've used my construction glue to add the base and the box together. I've now added my decorative paper all around the edges, and I did add it to the stand onto the box base before I glued the box base and the stand together. I've added my paper onto the lid, and again, because I want this to be, or I'd like this to be used as a keepsake box, I've gone to the additional effort of adding the decorative paper inside just to cover all the serrated teeth, and I did use my paper template to help me cut those pieces out. The lid goes down quite easily. I've added foam to the front and back panel so that my decorative panels can sit proud on the front or the back like so. And my thought process was only this portion is going to be adhered because you need to be able to get the lid open. But I wanted to make sure that when you do open the lid and go to close it, there's a space between the panel and the lid so that the lid doesn't keep getting caught. So that's my thought process behind that. So I'm going to get on now with the rest of my decoration, and then I'll come back. Here's the finished piece, and my plan is that I will set the time, because the hands are movable, for the date of birth. I've got plenty of room down here to add the baby's name, and I'm not saying this is 100% finished because I'm going to set it aside, and then it might be that over the coming weeks I add some additional icons to the front. I've got a shaker element on the front, which I'm really happy with, and you can see because I've offset the frames, the lids does open and shut very easily. I did also spend the time colouring the back of the die cut pieces, which are going to overhang the edge, just so that looks neater. And then the back is quite simple. I've cut an additional circle, which once I'm ready to write my message or the details of the baby, I can stick that onto the back. Overall, it's turned out a very sturdy box and is a perfect keepsake card to have on display. So you don't necessarily need to go to the trouble of splitting the circle into a lid, but with the additional layers I've added is certainly sturdy enough to be a keepsake box. And I'm happy with how this one's turned out. And I think the whole design would be great for a wedding card, a big birthday, all sorts of occasions. If you've enjoyed today's video and haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. And until next time, thanks for watching.